Hi, Mira, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you see Sutapa and Sooni and me, all of us? Yeah, hi,
Hi,
hi.
Assalamu
salams.
alaikum. How are you all? You're looking beautiful and equally intelligent.
Uh, I am still wiping my tears, so you have to give me a minute.
Okay, no
It's
problem.
your namesake. It leaves me in tears every time I watch it. And happy tears and mixed with so much feeling and so much emotion. And I don't know, it's just one of those films which is perfect in every way. It's
I
what a
agree.
yeah. I know. I'm Suni. What I mean, what this screenplay? It's like it's perfection. There's not one little thing that I would take away or add. It's just perfect. So Mira, I'm going to jump right in before, and I keep my tears for later. um, you gave him a role, or you were going to give him a role in Salam Bombay. A lot of people here know that you're in Salam Bombay, that was your first feature. Irfan had a role, you picked him, handpicked him from National School of Drama, and then you had to take that role away from him and leave him with that just one scene.
To be honest, I didn't give him the role when I picked him. I just was riveted by him. He was 18 years old and he had this magnetic intensity actually of a listener. He listened much more than performed when I first saw him in
That was at the
NSD.
National School of Drama, is that right?
School of Drama. Yeah, yeah. And he just seemed like, because I'm from India. I understand class. I understand that people cannot be street kids on a screen, just like that, even if they've come from cathedral school. I just don't buy it. So there are very few actors or young people that would have that leathered, weathered look that could work as a street kid. But I didn't offer him the role of Salim right off the bat. I asked him to come and live with us and do the workshop that we were doing in Bombay for towards Salam Bombay, not knowing which role he would play, but hoping just internally that he could play one of the gang in the workshop that we had with about 100 and plus street kids. Then 29 of them were picked to stay the course. And he did the whole every day. He lived with me in an empty flat on Pedder Road. And we did the whole thing, him and Raghubir Yadav and myself and all of us. But he was 6 feet whatever, right, Shrutapa? He was how,
Yeah,
6 feet
and he was not
something?
18. He was 24
He was
actually.
24 at that
But
time.
he looked
Yeah.
That's
जब प्यार हो जाता है, then you just want the guy to be 18. And but the kids came up to literally his waist and no higher than that. And literally the visual frame, the possibility of how to shoot this group of 4 or 5 kids in one frame, and there were plenty of frames that had to be that way, was not going to be possible with such a tall and gangly and older person. But it was more the height and the so that's why it was a very tough realization. And yeah, and that's why when we took away Salim, when not took away, we said you couldn't. I said you couldn't play it, but there's just one scene because we have to have you because he was part of the family and a very core of the family. Suni has taken some extraordinary photographs of the workshop of Salam Bombay that you see him just arm in arm wrestling with um, the other kids, but. So he gave it full-hearted, everything, but he couldn't play it. And I vowed I would come back. And it took about 15 years, right, Suni, that we came back. When Ashok Ganguly was meant for him, and it was just a phone call, and he said, "Haan ji, main aa jaunga." So I was so grateful that he didn't hold any grudges, and we kept our friendship for a long time before it. But it was so great to be able to have Ashok Ganguly for him.
Suni, I want to ask you about your memories of that time at Salam Bombay, when you were all kind of starting out, and this was going to be a new film, and it was Mira's first feature, and you were going to, your collaboration has yielded so much riches, and here you were doing something which not too many people had done before. So I want you to just, recollect some of those some things that you remember, and that one moment where he cried and he said, "तुमने मुझे film से निकाला है," and you have to make it
ये
up
सब
to me.
बातें अभी क्यों?
ठीक है, okay, नहीं बोलते, okay, but Sooni,
नहीं,
yes.
बोलो, बोलो. Let us suffer again.
I just remember that, I don't know, we didn't know any better, right, Mira? It was our first time, and we just plunged in without any thoughts of risks or whatever. We just plunged in wholeheartedly. And I remember Irfan being really, really sad and me feeling very sad for him, but knowing that it was the best thing for the film, and never actually really being convinced that it would have been good to have him part of the gang, because as Mira said, it just didn't fit. But at the same time, feeling so bad for him. So it was a real conflict, internal conflict.
Yeah,
Yeah, please
because
tell us,
Mira has
yes.
done so many films after that, but for me, it's very. I remember it very well. I also remember it was called some Sangam building where he was staying in Pedder Road.
Yes, Pedder Road, Sangam
Building.
We lived in an
Because I
empty
have
flat.
those inland letters where he wrote letters from. Because at that time he used to write letters and not mails. So, I have the letters from Sangam Building. He used to write to me. I was in Delhi. And he was very excited. And Barry John conducted the workshop where he was assisting Barry. So, he used to write and he was so excited. And and rightly so. See, the point with Irfan is he would never question that why did Mira decide this, or any director for that matter. But yes, he was so attached to the kids also and to everybody that he came home and he howled. That much I know. So yeah, he was very sad, but at the same time. So I just want to say one thing to you, Shubhra. Before this, Shubhra was talking about her book, and she said that Irfan took a long way. Actually, Irfan began with an international film, which was Salam Bombay.
Yes, I absolutely, but that it was like that one scene, and then 15 years,
Yeah.
as Mira said, 15
Yeah.
years. But before that,
Yeah.
not he actually did not make so much of it as we did, because in India we really want our people to to actually go out there and conquer the world. And before that, Nasiruddin Shah and Om Puri had done some great international projects, but it was only Irfan who was the real crossover star. There was nobody who had done the kind of project.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know this better than
Yes,
any of
yes.
us do. But yes, I stand corrected. And so to go back to you, Mira, when Namesake came along, I remember you talking to me amongst the many conversations that he had. He said there was such a huge feeling of relief. And you said to me, "Acha Baba Irfan, aa jao." That was the word, ki ab tum aa jao. And that's what he did. He just came, and he was no audition. He just came wearing that some shirt that you spoke about.
Pink,
And
pink linen.
pink cut. Acha, so black kurta.
Linen.
Linen. Okay, so the linen shirt. That linen shirt, I've seen that shirt in some other places. Yeah, so he came, and that was it. Ashok Ganguly was his, right?
Oh yeah, there was no audition or anything.
No.
He was just with me as we were auditioning for other roles in the Namesake, but he was around always,
Right.
right from I think within 1 hour of my landing in Bombay, it was a miserable little room in Oakwood in Juhu, and he just came. He sat on the floor, and we discussed a little bit even about the film, the story. Also, he's a great reader, as you know, so I think he knew the Namesake, if I recall correctly. I think he knew the book.
Yeah.
Even
I had
before
read the
he came.
book and I had told him to
Yes,
read it, and
yes.
he knew it. Yes, yes.
And he
knew it.
made some jokes के बंगाली के साथ मैं शादी किया that type of thing. And it was like that. It was like that, really. And I also want to say about that Salam Bombay scene, it was not like he maybe has howled to Sutapa, but when he was doing that scene with the scribe, it is a pretty. Firstly, I love the writing of the scene. In that scene, Sooni told a whole story, beginning, middle, and end in one page, in fact. But also the way Irfan performed it was very funny. He said, yeah, kya? He brought so much unsentimentalism to that performance in that one scene. He didn't hold a grudge to me, and he didn't project all that. He just was fully in that role too. In fact, he added to that role with his sort of kya hai, it was written, but the way he performed it, when he throws the letter away, it was lovely. So
Yeah.
The,
Yeah.
so
I
he
was going
always
to
believed in the whole. Yeah,
I was
in
going
the
to
whole thing.
ask you, did you write the crumpling of the
Yes.
letter and throw? Oh, you did. Okay. The way he did it, it was almost like he did it completely instinctively. Like, मैं तो ये चिट्ठी भेजूंगा नहीं. क्या कर लोगे बोलो. So it was almost, and so what was going through your mind when you were, you knew that you were curtailing his role to that one scene, and that you were, something would be so special so many years later. 1985. I mean, it was
80,
No, no,
80?
87 we
1987.
shot it.
87. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It was so long ago that I actually don't remember, but I do remember the scene and liking the scene and loving what Irfan did with it. Yeah. So, Tapa, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Did you
sure.
get married like this?
Uh,
Like in the namesake?
no, we did not. We did a court marriage.
Oh.
And that too, I mean, you were living together for many
Yeah,
years,
many
and then you
years, and
decided,
then,
बस
yes,
अब
just
कर
अब बहुत
लेते
हो
हैं,
गया,
बहुत हो
हाँ,
गया, कर
हाँ,
लेते हैं,
हाँ,
है ना?
let's-
Okay, so getting back to you, Mira, when with the namesake, I remember you talking about how. No, first before. Let me circle back. Who was going to be your Ashima? I know that it was not Tabu to begin with, because you were looking at some other options, and Tabu came
Konkona
along.
Sen. Konkona Sen was going to be Oshima. And although we used to have private jokes about how does such a young actor be the mother of Gogol, and I won't tell you who was going to be Gogol at the first round because it's no point. I don't want to give him any bhav, so forget about that. But so yeah, it was Konkona really pretty much all the way. And then, very surprisingly and sadly for me, Aparna Di, her mom, announced her film with Konkona like within the same month that we were going to start shooting the namesake. And these movies are not easy to mount, especially again, like most of my films, it was shot in several countries. There was so much coordination to do to make it happen. And then suddenly to like lose Oshima, even though there were questions about her youth by other people, not by me, because she's just such a deep actor and pretty much can do no wrong. So that was instant. I couldn't confirm. I couldn't move Aparnadi's shooting, and I had to shoot. So, and I think I called up Tabu, and the next day she was ours, and she was actually in a South Indian film at the time, and but within 4 days she was in New York, and the only thing she asked of me is to speak to the director of that film and sort of thank him and salam him and all that, and I did, and it was very very kind how he blessed us for this new endeavor. So
Wasn't it
that's how it
Viras?
happened.
Sorry, wasn't it Virasat that she was doing? That
No,
one.
Virasat had been done, and I
Okay.
loved Virasat. I think it was Virasat reason I called her because I loved Virasat and that scene that she does in Virasat. You know that
Yes.
scene? Yeah.
Yes.
I think I made her do it in several films since then, but I don't know if it made the cut. But yeah, she was. That's how she came, like literally within the week. You know.
I remember Irfan, you saying that this was Irfan's first visit to the US. He hadn't been there
Yeah.
Yes,
before.
yes.
Was that right? And also, these were people who didn't understand any Bengali, didn't speak it, and they had to. I don't know how fast was that process of learning and internalizing and becoming as Bengali as they did. And I know, Shutupa, that you told me that you were not very impressed with
With his
Irfan's
accent.
accent. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Well, there were two teachers for Irfan, and he wanted so much to be taught. The Bengaliness, the Bengaliyat. And one of them was Jhumpa Lahiri's father, Amarda, who was a librarian in Rhode Island, and his mom, who is really the Oshima of life, both of them in a way. And they came. I think the first thing I did was the next day after arriving in New York, we went to Jhumpa's home in Brooklyn, and her parents had come, and we spent the day with them. And I asked Irfan to really look at Amarda as the model of the accent But then we also had a Bengali caterer on Namesake in New York. And he had a very thick accent and a very charming guy, older man. So Irfan kind of on his own gravitated towards the caterer accent. And then, and by that time, it was a studio film as well. You know, we had three investors. We had UTV, we had Fox Searchlight, which is a leading studio here, and we had the Japanese. Yeah. And you know, at one point they left me alone. I had final cut. I had full control, but they left me alone. At one time they heard Irfan speaking in rehearsal or something in, you know, complete hate caterer accent. They got really worried. So and I said, and I had always said that we will never subtitle the English that Indians speak, you know, like most people do. Um, so they got worried that they couldn't understand his thick accent, you know. So we toned it down, and he's such a fine player that you can tone it down. It's like this, you know, कि थोड़ा यार इसमें नीचे कम हो, वहाँ और, you know, like literally a fine tuning of an instrument. That's what Irfan is to work with, you know. That's what he did. He went back to Amarda and less to the Luchis.
I wanted to ask you, Sooni, had you finished, right? Locked was the screenplay, everything was all locked before the actors came on board? Or were there any changes or, you know, things that were made? And from the book, there is a lot of, is it,
Change.
I don't remember it being completely faithful to the book, is it? Because the parts of Irfan, I mean, the parents were increased, the parts of Gogol were decreased, from what I remember.
Again, it was
Okay, but
so
me-
long back, and I'm
okay,
very
but
old.
between you and Mira, the collaboration-
Shubhra, I think it was pretty faithful to the book, except that because a screenplay can only be 110 pages max, there's only so much you can retain, and the book is very dense with emotion and feelings and incident, and you have to pare it down. And I think one strategy that we eventually came up with is to have large leaps in time to traverse these entire lifetimes. And I think, I don't remember, Mira, was it locked? Did we make changes? Did the Agra thing come later? I have some vague
They were
memory.
You know, one thing, Suni, the inspiration to make the film, the book into a film, came about really very like a bolt for me, because I had just lost my mother-in-law in New York City, and she was like a mother to me, and we buried her in this home that was not in snow, that was not ever her home, that is in East Africa, and I had never suffered that loss, and I was going home to India to shoot the last scene of the Vanity Fair with Reese Witherspoon. And I was going home, and I happened to pick up the book I had it with me, but I hadn't read it on the plane. And it was such a extraordinary, powerful impact on me because of losing a parent in a foreign country. Like, is this? And I remember landing in the airport in Delhi and actually calling Jhumpa, whom I had known a little. And I said the rights were available, and she said I could have them. And then I phoned Sooni, and Sooni had already read the book and loved the book, you know. And so it was like one of those films, when you say it was perfect, it was also perfect in how it was made to happen. You know, it was not disharmonious, you know, in that sense. But I did remember, Suni, we decided very early that it would be much more about the parents than it would be about Gogol. The book is more about Gogol in pages, you know, because I was really struck by this older love story that you never see, and a kind of love story in which it is not articulated. There are no Valentine cards, there's no I love yous, there's just chai in a kitchen, you know. And I had just lived with that with my own in-laws, you know, who were together 59 years when she was robbed by medical malpractice in a New York hospital. So it came from me, it came from that impulse. And Suni was open to it. And then, you know, Suni, we did things in the writing while you were writing, because Jhumpa was not raised, she was raised in Rhode Island, not in Kolkata. She used to come to Kolkata once in a couple of years with her family. So the point of view of hers was always from that point of view, coming into Cal. I was also raised in Cal, few summers, 12 summers when I was a kid. And I went to Loreto, I went to places like that, where in these engaged marriages, then the girl is brought out, they they ask for elocution, they ask for Wordsworth or certain staple anglicized poems to be recited, and it was not in the book, for
It's in
instance,
the
but
book, Mira. It's in
is
the
it?
book. It's very much in the book.
Wordsworth was in the
Of
book because
course,
Jhumpa
Daffodils is in the book.
Okay,
I
Oh,
have the
great!
book here.
Because Jhumpa told me that how did you know this or something, and she was very struck by the Kolkata section that was not in the book, so I confused that. Okay, sorry, but anyway, there were moments of that Calcutta life which she seemed to think was some things she didn't know. I thought it was that poem, but there were other things, I think. And then the rap song, Suni, remember we invented that. The idea of distilling, when Gogol is cutting his hair, which was Suni's invention, which was brilliant, the cutting of the hair. But the song we invented to speak of that, lots of pages that she wrote about tradition and Ashok's own memory of him and his father dying. You remember, Suni, all those things that had to be brought into like a tiny space, and we made this song that went with it.
Yeah,
So it told,
basically about the guilt he feels
yeah.
without saying it in dialogue. And I think, yeah, it worked very well.
so, and when Ashima asks him, why did you do this? And he responds in Bengali,
Yeah.
that because I wanted to, he says. And speaking of which, did he come and practice with you?
No, he never practiced language with you because I am not maybe a great teacher in terms of, I will make so many corrections that he'll get disheartened. So, no, he didn't practice it with me ever.
When did you first see the namesake?
Oh, I saw it in the premiere in Bombay.
Okay.
Yeah. Irfan's mother was here, if you remember, Mira.
That story, I
I
will
was
never
going to
forget it.
ask you
Yeah,
that story,
yeah.
and we'll let Mira tell that story. Yeah, yeah,
So
yes.
Irfan bhai took me to his mom, and I sat with her for at least 15 minutes. We were talking, and then she looks at me and said, मेरा बच्चा को मारना था आपको
नहीं
सिर्फ
एक
मेरा
मेरा
बच्चा
ही
को
बच्चा
मारना
मिला था मारने के
हाँ
लिए
एक मेरा ही बच्चा मिला था जो मारने के लिए
Yeah.
and she was not charming about it. I mean, she was like, what the fuck, you want my son to kill. Oh my god. And I held her hands and just asked for forgiveness. And Irfan was laughing, and it was actually a lovely memory. But I didn't feel ashamed, and I have felt it ever since. Since, because I also have a son. Just imagine putting a son to. Oh, anyway, it was because saw through all the premiere tamasha sab kuch. She just had this question to ask.
Also, to you, Shutupa, I know that you were very, very a tough critic and very, very hard to please. And I know that Pansing Tomar was the first time that you turned around and both of you celebrated because what about Namesake?
because I couldn't be honestly very objective about Namesake because he was playing a Bengali character. So for me, it was very difficult to go beyond that to see that film. So, for me, then the performance wasn't really, and Pansing was like his language, and he spoke it the way he spoke that I really felt he was at ease. He was, like good. But yes, but that was my first. Now when I see Namesake, I wish I can again call him up and say that, this moment was beautiful and this moment was really, really beautiful.
Yes.
I regret doing that.
Spousal stuff.
sorry.
Yes, no,
As
go
I
ahead,
said
yeah.
in the book, I think any other actor playing the character of Ashok Ganguly would have just faded into the background because he's not a loud character. He's not that active. He's very quiet. But only Irfan could have played him and so brilliantly and perfectly. And I think he and Tabu were destined to play Ashok and Ashima. No, Mira?
Yeah, definitely. And And the thing is that I also never wanted to make a film about the marginalized outsider, the way that very few films were made about our community in the world at that time. And I didn't want to, bichara, do that business. The thing about Irfan in the namesake is that it was humor. He has a lovely mischief. When he looks at the white girlfriend coming in, and he looks at him, and he looks at her, and then he looks at Gogol, and like, ठीक है यार, not bad, not bad. That kind of wonderful stuff. It's fun. He and I loved it. I loved it, and so we focused also on the lacing that he brought to Ashok. It was never, even when he calls her in the phone booth, when he's not feeling well, it's not woe is me at all. It's much more, it's much gentler, and I wouldn't say funny, but it's lighter. He just finds a way to not worry you, not worry Ashima. It's just beautiful, and that's the sort of love that I wanted to portray, or the way when she leaves him in the airport, and he just looks at her in the whole sea of people, and she looks at him, and it's just a little shake of the head, that's what he could bring and they could bring together, without that attention grabbing thing, without the violence in the distance or in the foreground. They just had this lovely, that was their relationship, that was their love, and these two actors, really understood that.
So
One
this,
interesting thing, they lived in the same building in Times Square, and we would go for the shoot. They would go in the same car, and after about 3 days, they said, "Yaar, alag alag gaadi agar bhej do to theek hai." I think it was to keep Ashok and Ashima like like the beginning of their relationship, where they were strangers. They were not used to each other in the beginning, in the cold water flat. And that was the stuff we shot in New York City. Interesting ways that they both preserved their character in everyday life.
that little nod of the head, that little
Yeah.
tilt in that airplane scene is one of those ones where it's a very Bengali, that
Yeah.
thing, Ami
Yeah.
Ashchi kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
thing.
But then he's been meeting also my father
Huh.
for so many years since NSD. So maybe he didn't learn the language, but there is something about some cultures, no? So which you just absorb as a cultural thing,
Yeah.
which was subconscious there, and maybe it just came like it was easier for him in that sense, I can say, not in terms of language, but he knew the culture. He knew. He had been coming to my place since he was a student in NSD. So,
Yeah, in fact, tell us a little bit about, when he would come to your house, and it was the first time he had encountered so many books.
yeah.
And he apparently
Yeah, he
would
didn't
just
get up.
He wouldn't get up. He
From
would
the
just sit
bookshelf.
and
He was just
read.
sitting there on the bookshelf where all of us were, we all came from my school because I was the only one from Delhi. So they all came home for dinner and we were all having fun. And he just sat there. He had not seen so many books together. All his house was all about rifles and guns and everything. So he just sat there for hours, like we were there for 3-4 hours. My mother had to really tell me कि ওই ছেলেটাকে বল কিছু খাবে না, something like that. So he just
Yes.
yeah, but I must, now that I've got an opportunity, Mira, I must tell you the Times Square, it reminds me, he was always wanted to thank, but he was a man of few words, because I remember you were so kind, because Babil and I was also there with us in Times Square, and we had come and you had made us see Lions King. And and he always said, "Oh my God, Babil could see Lions King because Mira had booked us to see the Lions King." So he could never thank you. So I'm just thanking you for that right now.
So kind. I mean, thank you. But also, I just wanted to say that bookshops and Irfan are like the place he wants to be, like this.
Yeah.
So the whole time we did the PR, the publicity of the namesake in America, that's all he used to do, to take me, and I would know the bookshops, and we would just roam the bookshops. And he gave me a couple of books I used to buy. But he was really interested in,
Yeah.
Umberto Eco at the time, in different authors, and he would pursue that very, very avidly. I think it was the reading that kept him going through the waiting process
Yeah.
of performance.
Yeah.
Um, I'm the film is so seamless, both in the writing of it and the performance, the actorly presences, everything just right in its place. Were there any roadblocks? Did anything happen? Were there any? The reason why I'm asking you that sometimes when we don't know what happens behind the scenes, some of it leaches into the film and it becomes some of the texture gets, but here it was just so one scene following the other. We are looking at a life, and it's not just the gesture. I think even the khadi kurta that he wears, that khaddar, that the thick khaddar kurta with that horribly dull, grim grey, and that mustache and the glasses. It's so Bengali. It's so bong in that initial
But
thing
that
in that
I'm sure
train.
is Arjun,
In
Arjun
the
did the
train.
costumes, right?
Yeah, I'm sure
Arjun did the
Arjun Bhasin did
costumes,
the
right?
costume.
That's the way we work.
Yeah, I mean
That's the
that
way we work.
the glasses and that whole train compartment scene and the way he puts his this thing when he's reading, he's stretching out
Yeah.
and he's getting into the reading of it. It's a very Bengali kind of chele gesture.
Actually,
Yeah.
a big influence. Well, I have to say, just in terms of your first comment, it is for me also. It was the making of the film was quite seamless in that no one tampered with me. And that's the problem in Hollywood studio films or any other films, that people they try to help you, and they are confused, of course, by so many things that are our culture and all of that. And I always have to. It's a team situation, so I have to accept, I have to listen to them and at least try to provide some solution or another. But in the process of doing that, some ineffable rhythm is tampered with that even I would not know until after the fact. And that has happened to me on several films that I've made with the studios. In the Namesake, the brilliant thing was we had three investors, which is why I had Final Cut. you know and having Final Cut is not that you have to brandish it and behave like a big boss. Having Final Cut is simply just the security of knowing that they don't have it over you, but you'll still have to play the team. You still have to accept the team or hear them at least. In this case, I cannot recall any tampering or request, or I don't feel this and I don't feel that. And I really made this film with Suni's foundation, with just as I wanted to make it. Musically, the Bhatyali songs, the Bengali, the fun of it. Knowing that wonderful comic actor who chases Gogol down the streets. Cinema Vehite also, and then very constructed shooting. A big influence for me, I wanted to play homage to, and I dedicated the film partly to him, was Ghatak, Ritvik Ghatak, and especially Megha Dhakatara, which was a kind of almost Russian look. If you know Megha Dhakatara, which I'm sure you know, the cloud-capped star, it's called here. The way the shooting, the eyes, the close up of one eye, and Shupriya Devi is in this film, The Namesake.
Yes.
She's the mother or grandmother of Ashima. So any thank yous I could say, to these great masters and dames of cinema in Bengal, I did in The Namesake. I even tried to cast my great theater director who taught me how to perform, Badal Sarkar, and spent a lot of time with him. I started with him when I was 16, 17 in theater in North Calcutta. But he was going to play the the guru, the one who teaches her how to sing. But he had just come. Badalda had just fallen and had a big accident on his hand, and he didn't want to. He couldn't do that. He said, but anyway. So there were real influences of Bengali cinema that I loved, and of course Satyajit Ray as well. In terms of in the Apu trilogy, how they fall in love over small details. That whole Boka Ashima Ashima, that whole laundry thing. It was in the book and in her beautiful screenplay, but just that humor, the lightness, the hurt, it was so beautiful, but also, a wink to the Apu trilogy.
You want
Also,
to?
I was just thinking you were talking about what's in the book, what's not. One of the things that Mira did was that she moved it from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where we both went to college and which we knew very well, to New York, so that she could have the visual parallels between the bridges of New York and the bridges of Calcutta, which, watching the film again, works so brilliantly. And the other change that came from Mira was to make Ashima a singer, which is not in the book. And again, I think it works really well.
The lovely scene in which she steps into the shoes. The and then I saw that in A Suitable Boy, so it's like this. It's almost the same thing where this young woman and the shoes. So I was wondering if you have, is that a fetish, shoes and women
Shoes are a
stepping
fetish,
into,
but that
yeah.
is a beautiful. Shoes
That
are a
is in the
fetish, but
book.
that's
Beautiful. It's a beautiful scene.
That's in
And
the book.
Gogol
Yeah.
also steps into his father's shoes when he gets into the apartment. So and it's a very moving, just quiet. I mean, your film, it's so quiet in so many ways, and it's so revealing of so much without a word being spoken. So
Actually, in terms of the word, Shubhra, that scene where Gogol comes into the apartment, we I and then he goes into the father's bed where almost the shape of the father's body was there, and he climbs into it, and I wanted him to howl, I wanted him to cry, and I didn't know I wanted him to speak in Bengali, that, like, the real inside of Gogol, that he almost never speaks that language, and I didn't know what he should say. And I remember, while shooting that scene, we called Jhumpa, and 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 she speaks Bengali. They speak at home all Bengali. And I said, what could he say? And she gave me that word, keno, why. And so I gave it to Gogol, and he had to Cal, and he worked with that one word. So we did have, sometimes, if these ideas would come, I did have Jhumpa, also somewhere over there, who could respond to us.
right, and there's so much lovely synergy between Cal and Irfan, in right from the beginning when he's little to the time when he's adolescent, rebellious, doesn't like his name, likes his name, and then the whole the aspect of reclaiming the name, reclaiming who you are. I mean, was Cal also an audition find, or was he on board? How did you find Cal?
Oh my goodness. Well, Cal was definitely much later in the game. I was, I always somehow think that I should work with a Bollywood kind of actor sometimes, because I think it, dono audience mil jayenge. Some folly I have, especially in the past. Now I don't have that anymore. So I was dilly dallying with a Bollywood actor
I
for
know
a
who that
long
is.
time.
I won't say the name.
I'm not going to take his name. And then, after again talna, I was told by him that he cannot kiss on screen. And it's not like it's a sex fest, the namesake. So I just thought, what the hell? I'm not, okay, fine. Finally, it was done. And then my 14-year-old son at the time had seen Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. This sort of puerile but very funny and effective comedy about, an Indian guy and a Korean guy
It's a frat
looking
boys.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's
Frat
getting
boy
stoned,
com, yes.
eating hamburgers. And he said, Mama, you got to look at this guy. And it was Zoran and my agent's son, who were friends. They were both 14, and Sam Walker. And they said, you got to look at this guy. And I looked a little bit excerpt on my computer, and I said, Beta, how can I just wasn't convinced by also that film, partly. Anyway, unknown to me, Cal Penn had actually wanted to option the rights of the book, The Namesake, and could not get it because it had been sold to us. And he wrote me a letter saying, this film, and I've always wanted to do it, yada yada. And then I met him, and I remember I think Dev Patel was always wanting a role in the Reluctant Fundamentalists. But there were few actors like that, and they would always come and talk to me about their stuff. But anyway, then I auditioned Cal, and it was very clear that his hunger to do it and the rightness of things. Like, he's born and raised in this country, and it's a very difficult thing to direct. Actually, it's like why I always say that Italian Americans should not play Italians because even though they are from the same cut of the cloth, they are not, because America is very, very powerful in its influence as you are raised. Even the way they talk and the cadence. Our son Zoran, he has a whole, when he wants to really get on our nerves, he becomes American. And otherwise we speak in Urdu at home or Hindustani at home. And it's very funny what the code speak of being an American. So Cal had that down so beautifully, and he was just so keen to do it, and it was lovely. And the moment we read some scenes, he got the part.
Right. Not too many people know that you made another film with Irfan, a short film.
Two short films.
Two short films. Yeah, one
Yeah,
was the AIDS one and
Migration and New York, I
Migration.
Love
Yeah,
You.
yeah. So I know that we are talking about the namesake, but because you didn't circle back to him with a feature. So, but these were the ones that actually fit the films that you were looking for, right?
Yeah, well, I circle back with the feature. Features take ages to do. And if there was anything that he could have done, I would have been talking to him, as I was always talking to him. So these short films were things I love to do because we can keep practicing our craft, frankly. And and they were good ideas. And so one was New York, I Love You. I think G5 is showing all of them. They've asked me for permission, and I've sent the films. Uh, and New York, I Love You, where he plays opposite Natalie Portman. And it's a wonderful 5 or 8 minute film about the 48th Street is run by the Orthodox. The 48th Street here is a diamond selling district, and it is run by Orthodox Jains, people, Indian Jains, and the Hasidic Jews. And both are Orthodox in different ways. One eats garlic meat, and one doesn't eat this, but they are very orthodox both. So the premise was what if orthodoxy vanishes for one moment between these two, the broker and the seller? And it was a script and an idea by Suketu Mehta, who wrote Maximum City. And he wrote this one, New York, I Love You. And we had 4 days to shoot it, and it was a beautiful experience because both of them again were at the top of the game, and they really liked each other, Natalie Portman and Irfan. So that's one film. And then the other film was an anthology that I was doing on trying to wake people up to HIV/AIDS.
Yeah.
It was called AIDS Jago, unfortunately. And it was with 4 directors that I loved, and I wanted them to, and I produced it with Vishal Bhardwaj, with Farhan Akhtar, and with Santosh Shivan, and myself, the fourth. And it was a script by Zoya Akhtar and Rima, of an idea that I had been told back in the 80s when I was shooting India Cabaret in Kamatipura and all those places. I was told this story about how HIV is like the greatest class leveler, that it can transverse anything. And Irfan had no compunction of playing a gay man who was married but did not desire his wife, um, and the sort of tragic place that he was in with this hidden love with another man, and his wife who was just unrequited, completely unlooked after by him. So very interesting film called Migration.
Isn't this the young man Arjun Mathur?
Yes, that was the
Yes,
first role of
that was the
Arjun's.
first one. And
Yes,
then when you
yes.
see him play now, his web series, the one that Zoya and did you remember the roots of where that came
Of
from?
course.
That
Well, of course, and the poor guy
yeah.
is not even gay, and I live in Nizamuddin next door to his dad, and we go morning walks, and he says, like Irfan's mom, he also says, "Sirf mera bacha." But he's not like that. He's extremely admiring, in fact, of his son, and lovely actor. And Arjun was an AD, first assistant director, and he wanted to be an actor. And I just So
Yeah. Suni, I wanted to ask you, uh, you circled back to Irfan with a script, and it was a science fiction something, and he was very keen to work on it, and there was some it went some ways, and then so just talk us through that.
So I had written the script, which is set in the future, and it's kind of sci-fi, futuristic, and it was very expensive. And it was back in the day before AI and VFX got much cheaper, so it was really expensive, huge. And I took it to Irfan, and as I said to you when we spoke about the book, that Irfan was always very approachable, though I was not in contact with him for so many years. All I had to do was ask, and he said, "Come on over." He was shooting a film. I went. I told him about it, showed him the script, and he was quite excited. He agreed to attach himself to it. He introduced me to Kangana Ranaut before she became the Kangana we know now. And he had just met Piku. He invited me to the premiere. He had invited her too, and then I went to meet her, and she attached herself to it, but it never got made. So,
Um, I wanted to ask you, Shutapa, about, the namesake was one of his, all time. I mean, if you look at his filmography, the namesake would absolutely be on the top of any of that. And, Pansing, namesake. What about if I had to ask you to choose amongst all of these? It's very hard to do that. And I know how I hate to be put on the spot. But if there is a moment in the namesake or a couple of moments, which ones would you choose as the ones that you hold close to your heart?
It's very difficult, but there are two moments which I really, really hold close. Is everybody likes that phone call, of course. But I also like one moment, and it's not to do with Irfan. It is between Tabu and Irfan, when she says that, oh, you want to kiss like Americans. I don't know why. I just love that moment. I love the ease, the body. That they looked like actually they are married, and it's so much of ease in their body with each other, and the way, and it's not like there there is so much of romance in that scene that I just love that
Love
scene.
that one. I was in Calcutta 2 days back, Kolkata, in 2 days back, for it was another session for the book, and we had it in the backdrop of Victoria Memorial, Mira. And the girl who was moderating it, she chose the Victoria Memorial scene to play before we started talking, and it was so beautiful and so moving and so appropriate to have that when he says
Yeah, it's the same scene.
the same scene. And it was amazing to see that backdrop, to see Irfan and Tabu in Namesake. And then there was Tigmanshu and Tilotama and me. We were just going to start talking about, Irfan. So it was magical. And it is absolutely such a gorgeous, it's such a chota scene, but it leaves such an impact. And my other one is the one in the car in which he's talking to Gogol, and then suddenly the camera catches a glisten of the eye. Just a glistening, just a small little thing, and it holds you, and it does something to your heart.
I told you the story, right, of that scene that with Irfan. I think it's in your book. I'm not sure. When I was shooting that scene, and he looked at me, and I finished it. I mean, I finished that one take, and he said, "Tujhe kuch aur chahiye na?"
Kuch
Before
aur.
I could tell him. And I said, हाँ, मुझे चाहिए कि आंसू आ रहा है पर नीचे नहीं आए.
नीचे नहीं आ रहा,
And
यहाँ तक.
that's what he did. That was the second take, which is in the film. That's it, exactly that. Don't ask me how he does it, but he knew that I wanted something, and I told him. And also, who can you tell? Who can you speak to like that, actor-wise? You can't with that type of specificity, almost anal, specificity. But with him, I was very comfortable, and so was he. He knew that something I was longing for. So
Yeah.
it was like that. We never did endless takes with Irfan. Hardly ever. It was always.
Thank you. And please come back because
Thank you.
tomorrow there are 3 great films and great discussions. Thank you, Mira.
Thank you, Mira.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Simi.
much.
Thank you. Thank you,
very
Sutapa.
much.
Thank you,
I
everybody.
wish I was with you. Thank you, everyone at G5 and Nikhil Advani to make all this happen. Thank you. Thanks, all of you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.